Okay, this is the third video in a series of videos about swirl flap delete from EDC16 ECU files. Now, the simplest version only has perhaps 3 of these maps, and this is a slightly more complicated version with numerous maps related to swirl flaps. Now, what I'm going to do in this video is talk about the other problems associated with swirl flap deleting, because when you delete the swirl flaps you sometimes end up with other problems which were either present before or will be present now. These often show up as error codes, which then result in you having to find the error codes and delete the error codes. Now, there are alternative ways around all this error code deleting, but they're not simple, just like error code deleting is not simple. So what I'm going to do in this video is show you some elements of that. It varies a lot from file to file, so don't think that you can just copy what I'm showing you here. You need to understand what I'm showing you before you consider making any changes. Now, the swirl flap area might be here, excuse me, but you have to go quite a long way through the file. In fact, you have to go to the end of the file to find the region that's involved in the controlling of the swirl flaps and what's going on, and that's this last little bit in the end of the file. In fact, it's not even all of this last little bit, it's this region around here. Now, this is fairly consistent. In other words, you should be able to find this area in virtually any of the EDC16 files, but of course looking at it like this is pointless because it just looks a mess, especially as some of the colours I've added seem to have just blurred into one big lump. What I'll do is I'll change to text view and move up a little bit, and you can see where I've added a few colours and changes. This is deliberate in the sense that you will know you're in roughly the right area if you look for the green parts. In other words, this bit here, which says 00002 17543 and then repeats down here, this appears to be a time constant that's used in lots and lots of files. So in other words, you find it here at the start of the area you're looking for, and you find it here at the end of the area that you're looking for. So there is a fairly good chance that if you can see these two sets of numbers in the file that you're looking at, you are in the right place. Now, after that, this is where the whole thing gets complicated. Not because it is so complicated, but simply because different files use different variations. Now, the first thing that you need to look for is this, where I've got red, blank, red, blank, red, blank, red, blank, and so on. Now, these ones that I've highlighted in red, these are for error and heal debouncing of the various options to do with the swirl flaps. Now, there is no point in me telling you what each one of these is for because they move around in the files, and so if I say to you that this one is for a particular thing, it might not be in the file that you're looking at. But the trick is that because they're all to do with swirl flap, the fact that this one is 00048 and then the heal part is 00048 and then I've got 00048 00048, these numbers don't matter. All you need to do is say to yourself the usual pattern will be error followed by heal, error followed by heal. So if you change the error value to 65535, which is in effect the maximum or forever, so in other words the error is never going to occur, and so you can just say right, enter, and change it to that and say yes, I'll accept that, number 1, okay, and then you go to the heal part, 1 2 3 4 5 zeros, heal, and that's all zeros. Don't know why we can't see the numbers in there, they've vanished out of sight, but never mind. Now, if you do the same, so you make that one 65535, that one 0, and so on. So if you change all of those until you get to the last one, which will be there, then all of those error heel zones will be gone. So whatever they represent for swirl flaps will now cease to function. Right, next you will probably be confronted with a series of numbers that are usually fairly low. In other words, these ones are 0030. They could be 0040, 0050, so don't worry too much about the numbers. And you don't really need to change these if you've changed the error and heel codes that are up here. So these can probably be left alone. What they usually are debounce values for these. So they're for the ones that you've already changed. Now, as you've already changed them, the values of these should not matter anymore. After that, it gets a bit difficult to interpret, but some files will have, as you can see here, a couple of temperatures, a sort of a maximum and a minimum temperature that is going to be acceptable to values for the actuators. Again, you shouldn't need to change these, because if you delete the other parts that we've been talking about, they should cease to be of concern. Now, once again, you end up with some more of these that are similar to over here. In other words, they're related to the time or the number of debouncing events. So you've got 50, 50, 50. So again, they're not really that important. What you're looking for is more collections that look like this. In other words, they would be 48, 48, 48, 48, 48, 48, except this one is already 65535. That's how the manufacturers left it. And so again, you could change those to read 65535, and then this one would become 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros, and then the next one would become 65535, and so on, and you would continue all the way through those until you've got rid of them all. So they would all read 65535 and 5 zeros for each pair. One error, one heel. When you get to here, again, this is a fairly constant value. So if you see this 40 about this point, you know you're on the right track. 40 seems to be used as the period duration for the output signal for the actuator. So you see 40 in lots of different files. Right, following on from that, you are likely to find something similar to this. So it's likely to be 2 and a little 2x2 map. These maps sometimes repeat, so there might be 2 of them, there might only be 1 of them. They are usually just what sets the actuator percentages. In other words, it's informing you or the ECU about the degree of opening compared to the actual values that are in the actuator map. Very often they just read the same. So in other words, this one might say 2000, 8000, and on the other side it will read 2000, 8000. You might find one that says 1000, 8000, 1000, 8000. So they do very little because they're a conversion that's 1 to 1. They might not always be that way. Then you get an area which is fairly easy to spot. If you look here, you've got basically what looks like 2000, 9500, 500, 5000, 5000. These are usually related to the values that the swirl flaps will use under various conditions. In other words, that 2000 might be 20%, and that might be a default value to use when something goes wrong. So again, you don't really want to touch that 20%. 95% is probably the maximum allowed. 5% here is probably the minimum allowed, and the 50% and 50% again are probably average values. But you don't really need to change any of these values because we don't want to interfere with those. One interesting thing to note is that if you look back at the previous video that I did, I suggested that we set the level at 20%. as the bottom level for some of the maps, and that fits in perfectly if this one here is in fact the lowest value of 20%. In other words, by setting the previous maps at 20%, some of the error codes on here may never show up anyway, and you may only need to touch these if you get error codes showing up. Now, again, you may or you may not get this. This appears to be another map to do with actuator output, and you don't need to touch that. So again, you don't have to do anything to do with that. Some files have this. It seems to be another version of that one there. Some files don't have it. So if you can't see it, a large flat linear two-dimensional map like that, then you probably haven't got one. And then again, we start into this system of 48, 48, 6, 3, 5, 5, 3, 5. I haven't made these red, but they would be red, blank, red, blank. And once again, these need to be changed to 65535 and then 0000. So in that one, I would put 65535, and in the next one, I would make it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros. And you can see that one in this file is already set at that value. And I would again continue through these, doing the same with all of these all the way through until you run out. So in other words, if that's the last error one and that's the hill to go with that error, then you've run out. And then these again may well be related to other factors. Now I suspect that this one and this one are actually related to that 40% there, because I think the 40%, the error deduction, in other words, has that 40% gone wrong, is here. Because I think that 38%, it represents 38%. In other words, it's saying if 40 goes below 38, flag an error, and if 40 goes above 42, flag an error. But again, you don't need to change those values, because as long as we've reset all these other ones in here, the actual values here are not going to make any difference. Once again, these appear to be minimum and maximum duty cycles, and once again, it doesn't really make any difference to what we've done with the rest of this. So again, it doesn't really matter. Now, when you get further than that, it's again a case of looking to see if you can find any obvious values in here that might be connected with errors. So in other words, you are once again looking for the possibilities of pairs that could be errors. Now you can see that there and there might be, but equally there and there might be. And you come along here, there and there might be, and there might be. So in other words, you've got a whole lot of these that may well be a similar thing. Now it's very, very difficult to pin down exactly which ones of these are for sure problems or errors that you need to deal with and which ones are not. But if you choose a possible ending and you say to yourself, well, that I'm not going to assume that 258 is part of this. This is obviously another map. So I'm going to ignore that map, that's the last map of this sequence. If I assume that that's not part of this sequence, then it's possible that that is error and heal when it's been set at a maximum. It's possible then that that is error and heal when it's been set at a maximum. And so it's possible again that these may be error and heal and they've been set. It's very difficult to tell with some of these, which is why I've left them uncoloured, because it's quite difficult to tell which of these is which. This is where, without a Damos, you can't literally look at this thing and say, oh yes, this is the answer, because it will not be really, really obvious what you should change in these values. But you can get round not being certain by making changes in a sensible manner. In other words, you can say to yourself, okay, well, if that one is 65535 and it's an error and that's a heal, then if that's an error and that's a hill, and if that's an error and that's a hill, so you could always change that one, couldn't you, to 0. And then if that one is an error, you could change that one to 65535, and if that one is a hill, you could change that one to 0. If that's an error, you could change it to 65535, and if that is a hill, you could change it to 0. So in other words, you can go through these and change them a few at a time and see if you can actually make a difference to your file. Now, I would be guessing, I would be saying to myself, if this was me, I would be saying, well, that looks like 65535 could go in there. And then I would be saying, that one looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 noughts could go in there. I've lost one. And then I would be saying, so that one would be 0, 65535, 0, 65535. So I'd make that one 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 noughts. And I would make that one 65535, and then I would make this one 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I would make that one 65535, and then I would make that one 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros. That one's already been set, that one's already been set. When I get to here, I would make that one 65535. That one's already 0. That's 65535, that's 0. It might be worth, it looks like that one's not actually functioning, but I could put in there 65535 just in case. And so I would just go through, and all of these pairs, wherever I thought there might be a possibility that that was a point that might report a problem with the swirl flap actuation, whether it's a low voltage, a high voltage, a stop not reached, anything, I would change all these to 65535 for the error, meaning the error will not be reported, and then the heal times or the events change to 0, which means that they will never be reported, because the instant they are, they will be instantly healed. Now, I apologise for not giving you any more precise information about this part, but it's impossible because of the variations. There are variations between the engines and between the ECU arrangement between the engines, and as the years change with the engines. So it's impossible without a Damos to say to you, this is exactly what this value is for. So this is just a sort of generic overview, but I hope it helps. Right, I'll stop there.